What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 209 of the Start Build Grow Show. All right, guys. As usual, you don't want to just sit and listen to me talk all day. We love to bring in amazing guests and people that can share their knowledge, their experience that contributes to the entrepreneurial journey in the roofing and construction space. And we have a very, very, very extra special guest with us today. And she's kind of famous already in the roofing world and in my world and the Roofing Academy's world. But we're going to bring in my sister and the CEO of Elite Roofing and Solar out of Denver, Colorado, Mrs. Brie Reis.
Hey, thanks for having me, for giving me such an awesome intro. That was dope.
I rehearsed. I was planning notes like how to do that. You don't need an intro. It's so easy. I mean, I'm just so grateful to have you in my life. Obviously, you're my sister, and I got to kiss up a little bit. But it's fun, and we've been on this journey together now. I mean, what 12 years?
12 years.
Man, yeah. It's crazy how fast that goes. It seems like just yesterday I was leaving, going to college, and you were still hanging out with mom and dad and just going into high school and trying to figure out life. And here we are with multiple businesses, families, kids, and all the things. But, it's been a while. You have been on the show before. I think you said it's probably like 2.5, 3 years ago. And for those of you who are just listening or just now watching or tuning into the show, this thing's been going on over 4 years now. This is episode 209, which is kind of crazy. And we just keep getting better and better and more downloads and trying to get better and better at what we do. But she's been on here before, and it's been 3 years or so you can kind of go back and check that archived show out. But for those who haven't gotten a chance to meet you and don't know your story, how did you get into roofing? And tell us a little about your journey into roofing and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. I feel like I got into roofing how most people got into roofing, and like kind of by accident, not goal wise, or I want to grow up and be the CEO of a roofing company or even an admin at a roofing company, or however you want to look at it, plug in a title. But I needed a job and you wanted to give me one. I don't really know how else to say that, but my big brother was starting a roofing company, and he called me and asked me if I would be able to come on and be the admin. And I told him only if he thought I could do the job, and not just because I was his sister and because I'm super stubborn like that. And so I started at Elite Roofing in June of 2010 as the admin, and Elite Roofing just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And so as Elite got to grow, I got to grow alongside it, along with you and Cody and Mom, and just family. We all really learned as we went, and as a need happened, we plugged it. And so I went from admin to production assistant to production manager to director of operations. And then in 2019, Cody and Randy promoted me to CEO. So it's been a really, really, really fun journey. It's really, I started at Elite Roofing at 23, and it's a part of my identity. Who I am, who I've become over the last 12 years is so much to do with this industry and this business, and the things that it's pushed me, all that, that, have you ever seen Laffy Taffy being made? Like in Mountain Town or something? Like, that's what roofing's been for me. It really is like stretched me into the person that I am today. And I know that it's going to stretch me into the person that I'm going to be in 10 years from now.
That's awesome. And I think there's something to be said. And here's the thing. I can't sit here and take credit as if this was planned, or this is like, something that, that I had a script to follow. No, it was just entrepreneurship. And at first it was just trying to, throw people at problems and trying to just grow my business and doing the best I could, just kind of winging it and shotgunning. Right. But what we learned through that, through this experience is, if you give somebody, an opportunity with, the right upside, the right culture fit, and kind of let somebody, try and let somebody learn and grow with the business, that seems to be a really good recipe for success. And the fact, to the point I'm making, is we now kind of intentionally do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that the admin, little did we know that bringing you on as an admin to kind of help, with whatever random task we can have you do, really helped us as me as an owner start to realize, hey, what is this person's strengths? What are their weaknesses? What more can they handle? And you just were like, I'll take on more. Let me try this. Let me try. And everything we threw at you, you just latched onto it and learned it and took off with it. And now we're not only intentionally rinsing and repeating that same process continually with our own company. Our admin, they're rock stars, and
Mm-hmm.
they come in as like, somebody that, just wants the job, wants an opportunity. And then we continue to grow. And then all of a sudden they, they thrive. And then another job or another position opens up, and then they get, more and more, ingrained in what we do as a business. So I think there's a huge takeaway there in the fact that, one, we don't want to grow too fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's really challenging to plug high level experienced people into a business to make sure they mesh well with the culture. But if you hire someone for their character and you teach them skills, they have a greater opportunity to grow as an individual, but also grow with your company. And next thing you know, you have an amazing culture, and you have a bunch of people that are really bought in and striving to the same common goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as they're bringing value to your organization, you're bringing value to them as a human being. Like, how can you build more loyalty in a human being than to bring them value and self-worth? Like, it's unmatched.
I love that self-worth. That comes up every once in a while, but probably not enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if as leaders, it's like, we're not just here to get a job done, right? We're not just here to, put numbers on a board or be profitable and clock in and clock out. Like, we're here to develop other leaders, right? So, and in doing that, we got to help people expose and grow and learn their self-worth. And in order to do that, we got to be available and open to looking at ourselves and growing ourselves as self-worth and self-aware, right?
Mm-hmm. It's so true, because we can so easily squash that. As easily as we can give it, we can squash it.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
What would you
Yeah.
say is some of the things that you've, some turning points, or some things that you've, I guess throughout the 12-year journey, what are some things even early on that you felt were those pivotal points where it just propelled you forward and you learned, what are some like significant moments in your journey that, that someone else who's listening to this or watching this is going to benefit from?
Gosh, man, there's been so many turns and twists. I would say kind of in the beginning, because I'm so good with tasks. I think once I realized the way that this job strengthened me interpersonally, like with people, and just like that, like being a leader, and like I'm not only can bring value to the company and the company bring value to me, but I can bring value to other people. I think that was a big turning point for me. It's like, wow, we can help people. Like, we can, so that was huge. But I would say interpersonal skills, period, because it's just not something I really came into this business having, and still struggle with today, but a million times better than I was at one point. But I think too, even over the last, all businesses ebbs and flows. And I think, most people watching know Elite has no different story than that. And so, I think it's been neat over the last couple of years of our market not having hailstorm, really to be able to pull back Sometimes you can think you're really, really good at something just because life creates a circumstance that allows you to be really good at it. So it's been neat to like have those natural graces of life a little bit be removed and kind of expose, okay, what do I actually need to work on? Like, what did I think I was really good at and could potentially have actually sucked at? And I just had the grace of life, like floating that character of mine. So it's been neat over the last couple of years. Really hard, but neat. A pivotal moment for sure for me to be able to pull that back and say, okay, like, what do I really need to work on? Like, what do I need to, you know, like shake off the edges of?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about that. You talked about it in passing just at this event I was at just a week ago, and it's so easy to, we were in a situation where, we started this company, we put together a really good solid team, and we also had the market, right? We had year after year after year after year where those big hailstorms, and we were able to just capitalize and grow and scale and grow and scale and just create this massive success curve. And it was fun, right? We started getting all this notoriety, the covers of magazines and all these things, and then all of a sudden the market shift changed, right? That the storms went away, and we had to adapt very fast. We were a little top heavy. We had too many, a lot more people than we needed for the volume that we had. And then we had to shift gears and change the business model, add different verticals and change things. And looking back at, that 5 year, growth trajectory where we 10x'd our business and we were doing large numbers, we were doing millions of dollars per month in revenue and over 1,000 roofs a year in production. And then we had to make all those changes. Looking back right now where we are, we've made all those changes. We've adapted and really refined and changed our business model. But I think, for me, and I like to your, perspective on this as well, but I believe that I've learned more in the last 2, 3 years going through this challenge of having to actually sharpen up my saw and really, really test myself as an entrepreneur versus just reacting to an amazing situation. Right. And it just makes me that much better. And we launched the Roofing Academy. You do the coaching, and someone just threw on here, you're a great coach. Yeah, she's probably a better coach than me. But that's okay. And in doing all that, there's been a part of us that's in me intentionally like, no, I'm not done yet. I'm not done in roofing. I'm not done building my roofing company. I'm not done solving problems. I'm not done, in that side of the business. But I absolutely love coaching and training and sharing our journey with others. So that's why we run both parallel. And I think that gives a really unique perspective because we started this thing on top of the world.
Mhm.
We could do no wrong. It was just absolutely crushing everything we touched. I was told at one point I had the Midas touch, and everything I touched just like blew up and went really well. And then you go through the challenges, and now I think it's made us. I know speaking for myself, it's made me like that much better of a leader, better of a coach, better of a leader of a company, a manager, a boss, a CEO, whatever. Like I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I truly believe that I've gotten way better over the last couple of years, having to diversify and really, really, press into my skill set as an entrepreneur and as a leader.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that.
What
Mhm.
are some things that, that stand out to you as like big learning, some of the big things that you've learned over this time as well?
Ugh, my gosh. I think flexibility is probably the number one word that I would put to it. I think those of us that are in ops and brains just function in an operations sort of way, like we have to be really, really, really careful that we don't become too rigid. Um, because we need to be rigid enough to keep everything organized and in place, but not so rigid that we bottleneck everything and that we stop progress. So I think that's probably been one of the biggest things for me. Like, are you being flexible? Like, are you flexing where you need to flex and standing strong where you need to stand strong? And sometimes that can be a really, really, really hard internal conversation. There's so much accountability there. You don't want to screw it up. So that's been probably huge for me, especially when you're thinking about an operation mind, because like you just want to organize the crap out of everything, but you can organize the crap out of too much.
Yeah. That's something to be said about that. What's too much organization? What's too much operations? What are too many SOPs? Is that like
Mhm.
a thing?
Yes, that is absolutely a thing. That is absolutely a thing, and that's why we track DSO, and that's why we look at our days, our production cycle and our sales cycle, and like we're looking at those things on operational side too, because we want to make sure that we're not creating bottlenecks inside of operations. I was even sitting down and talking to a distributor today, and he's like, I always have to balance what I sell off of how my operations team is going to respond off of it, and I was like, that's across the board. I mean, you go outside of roofing for sure, you're going to find the exact same thing. Sales and operations are always going to be this push and pull, where we're trying to find this beautiful balance. And as long as like both areas stay flexible, I mean, that flexibility there can become, a compeller for like a propeller for your business, but it can also sink you, you know, not
Yeah,
finding the balance between those things.
yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about because where I sit as the visionary in the business, I'm always thinking scalability. What can I do to put things in place, systems in place to scale? And the question is always like, okay, and if I'm coaching somebody, I'll ask them, okay, when we're kind of getting to know each other, if you were to double your revenue right now, would you be able to handle it? Do you have a system in place? And that question is a really tough internal question where a lot of people, the answer is no. Like, oh my gosh, I'm already working so hard. I'm already, running around like crazy. But there's another side to that where if you're so systemized and you're working so much on processes that you can almost miss out on the bigger picture of, scalability as well. So yes, it's vitally important to have standard procedures and processes in place. But if they're not, easily digestible and rinse and repeat and simple enough, then there's another issue on the other side of that, right? So you got to kind of find that middle ground where you can't have a complete lack of organization because then you'll never get out of the weeds and you'll be wearing all the hats and never be able to work on your business. But you also don't want to work so much in depth on the business that you lose sight of the fun and the vision and the simplicity of it when you're really trying to execute, right?
Absolutely. You think about like, I'm going to say this because everybody's been here, and I know you and I know me, and both of us have like probably both thrown a phone over this, but like customer service, the auto attendant, like if it's taking you 5 minutes to get to a person and you're calling an auto attendant, whatever customer service that is, like you can do that with your task. I hope that makes sense. Like your organization, like if your staff is making 100 clicks to do one process, like that process is probably too long.
Yep.
You're paying somebody for every click they make with their mouse. So you got to think about like the efficiency that goes into all of those things. Like I think about those things like how many steps is it taking me to get this one process done? And if that step like reaches a certain point, it's like, dang, like we got to cut something out. What do we really, really need? Because especially like once we get bigger and we're starting to look at all our numbers and we're running our business by the numbers, like could we be having our staff track numbers that we're not actually looking at, or that we're not actually using to make decisions, like things like that. Like that's one of the things that we learned even over the last 4 years. Like we tracked everything, 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 and now we kind of pulled back from that a little bit because we just don't have the staff to maintain it. But of course, we are like the numbers we need, we know
Yeah.
1,000,000%. And so it's made me look like, did we really need to track that number? I don't
Absolutely.
know if I ever actually looked at that number, like
Yeah.
it was cool to
Well,
have, but I paid someone to put that number in there and I never looked at that number, like.
yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of things to dissect there, and one, it's you got to understand, and figure out from a high level every task, every click, every phone call, every move of the mouse takes time, and there's cost associated with that.
Mhm.
Every single piece of that, there's a cost associated with that. So you got to also understand, like if I'm the owner and I'm wearing all the hats and I'm doing all these things, what is the cost that I'm, costing the company by not working on the business? Can someone else be doing this? One, we got to understand our value. Like what is our value as a leader to the company? And if I'm doing a whole bunch of tasks that are not contributing to the growth and the well-being and in the efficiency of the company, I'm doing the company a disservice, right? So that monetary, perspective of every single thing has a cost to it, and there's opportunity cost there too, where if everything, if you're doing too much or you have someone else doing too much, are they putting a bunch of energy into something that's not actually affecting the company and moving the company forward? So I think a good exercise to do, this is somebody, if you're listening to this, you can take this note right here. And this is definitely something we do when we onboard, new companies that we're working with, is we're going to actually help you identify what those key metrics are, the KPMs, KPIs, key performance indicators, key performance metrics. Just because you can track 300 things doesn't mean all 300 are key performance metrics. They're not the vitally important things that you must track to be able to make solid decisions to then ensure profitability and growth for your business. So you want to kind of narrow down, hey, what are the 7 to 10 key performance metrics that you need to track on a regular basis? And then how do you report on those? And how do you, assign someone to take ownership of 1, 2, 3 of those? And you kind of start to spread out that way. And then when you come together when you're meeting as a leadership team, then you're going to discuss, like, Brie has her specific metrics that she tracks. I got my specific metrics. Cody has his specific metrics. Mm-hmm. And when we come together, we have that meeting, a very intentional meeting, and we're all on the same page, and we go back to work. We have to be able to do that to grow our business. If you own a business and you have to be involved in every little aspect and every little decision in your business, and then you come to us and say, hey, my business is not growing. I'm not growing. How do I grow? Okay, you got to look in the mirror first. If you're literally having to approve every single sentence that goes out in marketing and every little thing, unfortunately, you're probably the one bottlenecking business. Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to kind of press in a little bit more on, operations, strategy, implementation. I'm going to ask Brie a few questions on how to give us some tips and advice on how to actually implement new big changes this year. I mean, with all the different technology and all the things that we're doing, and we get all these sponsors here that are all pieces that can help you, systemize your business, but you got to be able to implement those things. So we're going to talk about implementation on the other side of our break. But again, this show would not be possible if it weren't for our amazing sponsors.
If you aren't using Job Nimbus, you should be.
The effects that it's going to have on my personal life, I can see is automation is going to change the way I live.
We've been able to eliminate all the paper, all of our paper files, and actually everything is online for us now.
Are you looking to stand out with your proposal? Sumo Quote is the contractor quote that crushes the competition. It is the fastest way to build custom quotes that impresses clients and wins more work. It's one of those must-have technologies for roofing contractors, allowing them to sell faster, sell more, and sell smarter. Be sure to check them out at try.sumoquote.com/start-build-grow.
Roofers, you want at least 5 solid lead gen tactics building chemistry. Let's say you have door knocking, referral systems, job site branding, and you add in aggressive SEO, paid ads, and boom! Smells like more leads. Hookagency.com.
Gotta love a Hook Agency. Those guys are doing fun work. But check out hookagency.com, jobnimbus.com, as well as try.sumoquote.com/start-build-grow. Now, Brie, I guess I'm just going to put you on the spot because I think, you've worked. You're kind of like the ghost whisperer of Job Nimbus here. When we kind of decided, I'll take credit. When I decided because this is not credit you want to take. So when I decided that it'd be a great idea to change CRM systems, I basically just said, hey, we're going to change CRM systems. Hey, Brie, do you think you can help me with that? And just threw it at her, right? And try to do my best to kind of help support as best I could, but I'm not exactly wired to be she tells me to go away. However, we learned a lot through that process. And I know that comes up a lot. A lot of people are trying to figure out what's the best system for me. And the reality of it is there's value in everything. You can find value in everything. You can adjust your model. You can adjust the software. You can do different things. And for us, we really consider ourselves I like to be really creative as an entrepreneur, and I like to, be able to kind of carve my own path and build my own business model. And I don't want to be restricted to a software that kind of puts me in a box and makes me kind of do things the way their software is designed. So that's why I decided, hey, I wanted something more customizable. And that was ultimately a big reason why we switched. And then you kind of had to take on that task. So for somebody in the industry, without getting too far in the weeds here, somebody in the industry who's listening to this, or who, it has somebody who's they're trying to implement, or they're trying to help get somebody to help them implement. Give us some tips and tricks on what a good process is if you're trying to implement a new CRM system or any sort of new system or technology into your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the number one thing is that you need to understand all the pieces. And so it's really, really hard in today's world. I feel like we live in this like big cloud of confusion sometimes, because we move so stinking fast. Technology, you think about how much technology has grown over the last 20 years. I mean, it's amazing. It's unmatched, and so like trying to understand the way that if I do A, B and C happens. And if I do D, our next letters are going to happen. And so I think it's really, really, really critical that in the beginning that you understand all the pieces. And if you understand the pieces, then you can understand the responses to the actions. And then with that being said, with there being so many, you have to understand what is the most important achievable goal here, because there's always going to be a negative. You can't really achieve everything with everybody in mind, if that makes sense. So you got to say, okay, and the way that I do this is I always look at what is the best for the organization, because there's a lot of human beings involved here. There's a lot of departments. Department collaboration is so massively important to your organization. So there's got to be push and pull, but you have to, at the end of the day, say like, what is the most important thing that we achieve here? So I think knowing your end result and understanding the pieces and variables. So if you can break that down in the beginning before you really start to push in, especially when you're building out a CRM, because when you're building out a CRM, everything that you do in step 1 is going to affect step 4. So if you don't have those clearly defined achievables in step 1, you're going to end up doing step 1 2 or 3 times.
Interesting. Okay.
So that would be probably some of my biggest advice, especially with CRM building. And I've done a class on it for the Roofing Academy. But you do this first, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And we're just building on top of those concepts and constructs.
Yeah. And I love that. Like, this is where your vision and your integrator come together, because, I've had to train myself on this too, where when I'm addressing the team and I'm kind of wanting to kind of change things or implement something, my job is to say, this is the end game. This is the desired outcome that I'm trying to get. This is the goal. And then, hey team, help me work backwards to where we can get to a starting point to then work back towards that goal. But if we don't know what that goal is, what that end game is within whatever task it is, it becomes just kind of a mess. And you're just like, well, I'm just working to try to do things for whatever reason. I'm not even sure. And it can get messy. So we got to be aware of that as, at the visionary side. We got to be aware of that, but then we contribute. And one of the things that I think is pretty common in most entrepreneurs out there, visionary aside, with a tendency, I don't know who else out there is listening to this, but I'm raising my hand because, if I was speaking, we'd be like, hey, raise of hands, who loves a good old fashioned whiteboard? And I think like anything can be mapped out on a whiteboard. And it just goes back to business 101. Here's what I'm trying to do. Map it out. Map out step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then take it from a micro level down to a macro level down to a micro level. Okay. When you're looking at a CRM system, you need to build something that every step for every piece of the business. But if you look at that huge, task as I'm going to get this all done now, that's not going to work. So we got to think breaking that down into different verticals within the business. So if you're doing residential, if you're doing insurance, if you're doing service work, if you're doing commercial work, if you're doing solar, if you're a contractor doing, general contracting work, there's all these different things that are different pieces of your business that all have different workflows and different, step-by-step processes. So what you want to do is kind of paint that vision and let your team help contribute to developing the step-by-step system. I mean, to this day, every time we're launching a new division or changing or adding a vertical, we go back to the same process that we did. I mean, the first time I ever sat down and said, I'm going to start a roofing company, I was sitting in a hotel room and I grabbed the notebook paper that they had, built like this, have sitting around in the hotel room. And I just literally was like, okay, step by step, how do I start a roofing company? Step 1, step 2. And I just built all that out. And that became the framework, what is now, 13 years later, in a fully functioning, very, very sophisticated business. But I think that there's something to be said about keeping it old school and grabbing a whiteboard, grabbing a notebook, and just thinking of your business in a step-by-step way and create step-by-step processes for everything. And I'd like to hear Brie's perspective on that, because I'll do that on the whiteboard, and then but getting it to the end game, that's where I struggle, and that's where she excels, and we've done really well together with that dynamic.
Yeah. We are blessed to be the yin to each other's yang over the last 12 years. But that's why I'm always like, Randy, just point me, and I'll get us there. It's always kind of been a blessing that we've been able to have together. But you don't always have that. And for me, like, that is totally, Randy loves a whiteboard. Like, I need a quiet room with nobody talking to me. Like, I need like my desk clean and clear, like no distractions. Like and then an SOP, and it's a high level SOP, but it's just like what Randy said. Like, it's just step 1, this, step 2, this, step 3, this, and then you break down each one of those steps into smaller chunks, and that ends with a process and all the SOPs you need for that whole implementation. But I think that goes back to whether you're a teammate or not someone that's had to learn interpersonal skills over the last 12 years.
Sure. You had to learn it, right? And Ray, earlier, threw a comment up earlier, defining roles was such a breakthrough for us, thanks to Connor Rodich for doing that. And you guys know Connor, he's the co-host, so you'll see he and I are on quite a bit. And he refers to it as getting in the lab. He gets in the lab and he's like, all right, I got to build a system. I got to implement something or create a process for something in my business, and just take distractions away, get in, focus, and get in that lab time. So Brie does the same thing. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, even though like I'm a lot more on the vision side of things, everybody has the capacity to get in the lab and sit and focus and make things happen. You have to. It's easy for us to have these, self-limiting beliefs of like, and I do that. I'm trying to be self-aware of that, because it's easy for me, like, oh, I'm a visionary. I'm not good at implementation. I'm not good at, these sort of things. The more I say that, the more it manifests itself. Right. So if I need to get in the lab and create a process or create a slide deck or a sales deck or something like that, you better believe I have to have the ability to sit down and do that and be confident in my ability, even though I might need 2 or 3 people to help me afterwards because I misspelled or mispresented certain things. But very important, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's why I like that you said limitations too, because I think when you're going into implementing something, that word right there cannot be a variable. I've especially through coaching over the last 4 years, I've realized that people get hung up on something and it becomes a ceiling and a wall that stops implementation progress. And most of the time, I would say it's built around some type of fear, whether it be a real fear or a perceived fear of some type of something happening. So just be super aware that you're not allowing ceilings and walls to impede your ability to implement. So you can't quit, basically, is what I'm saying. You can't say, oh, I've heard so many people say, oh, I decided not to go with that CRM because it couldn't do A, B, and C. And I'm like, ooh, you got to find a route around A, B, and C, because you're not going to find a CRM that can do 26 letters. Like, how do you take the ingredients that you have at your fingertips and make them what you want them to be? So you have to be able to push through the thing that pops up that says, no, this can't happen. You're like, no, there's a way. It may not be the way that it looks or the way that it's on paper, but how do we swerve around this this wall or this ceiling in this implementation.
Yeah, and that circles back to the beginning when you were talking about the flexibility, got to be flexible. And I think you apply that to all aspects of business, but especially when you're building a system, you got to be flexible and got to be able to be creative and work through that. Because if you think that there's some magic bullet or magic button that's just going to make everything work, it doesn't work that way. A lot of people will buy programs or buy software or buy coaching or whatever, thinking that, well, this is the path of least resistance. This is the easy button. There is no such thing as the easy button. You still got to put in work no matter what it is. Yes, surrounding yourself by good people, getting coaching, getting, technology and hiring and investing in certain things in your business can absolutely help you grow exponentially, but that does not replace putting in the work. What you're doing is simple, kind of like what I talked about earlier, is you're putting in the right work. Okay, just because you're working all the time, just being busy all the time, doesn't mean you're allocating your time and resources to the right things, and you're putting your energy in the right thing that's actually driving and propelling your business forward.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so funny. I ran out of time on Friday, right? And I had to get to a football game, and I still had like 20 emails to check.
Yeah.
In one of my inboxes. And so I was like, I told Eli over the weekend, my husband, and I was like, I treated that last 15 minutes of work like a no huddle 2-minute drill, in football. Like I literally was like, click, 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 click. And I was like, at the end of it, I was like, I just got a ton done in 15 minutes because I didn't overthink anything and I didn't allow anything to come into my space. And so I was like, I'm gonna do that like once or twice a day, every day, like a 2-minute drill for football, but just treat one of my inboxes like that. Because yes, maybe I didn't do it as 110 efficiently as I could have, but maybe I didn't. Like I truly at the end of that felt like, wow, like I am overthinking some things and I need to just apply this concept to my day. Maybe not my whole day, because just the same way they can't do that the entire football game. But maybe I need to bring that in,
I like it. I call it a sprint, right? That, that little 30-minute, 15-minute sprint throughout the day. With me, yeah, it's easy to get distracted in shiny objects. You got your phone ringing, you got your email going off, you got your social media, you got all the things happening all the time, especially I'm managing multiple businesses, but it's so funny you say that, because I actually did the same thing earlier today where I was like, you know what? I just told myself, I was like, because I'm like, gone for a couple of days last week, and you know how it is, you just get behind on the email. I'm like, I'm gonna crush this email, just like 30 minutes, like click, 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 get as much as I possibly can done. And it's amazing what you can do when you actually like focus on that one thing and don't let stuff distract you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. What was it? I think of something that made me think of something else too. Talking about the sprints or your time and efficiency, but it's starting to kind of draw a blank on me. But we're going to kind of start the process of kind of wrapping this thing up here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in if you're watching the live here on any of the channels. For those of you who are tuning in or just now, connecting with us, we go live. We're not always live. Sometimes we're recorded, but today is a live one. But we put our content out on all the social media platforms: LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Facebook and Instagram. You can find us and check us out there. Plus all of the podcasting platforms, you can download the podcast there. So you want to catch up on some older episodes and connect with us, we would love to have you and love to hear what you have to say and have any questions about those episodes. Now, as we start the process of wrapping up here today, I kind of wanted to, in true, Start, Build, Grow Show fashion, we like to kind of put our guests on the spot, and we're going to give you, a chance to come up with your golden nugget. I'm sure you're familiar with hopefully you're prepped and ready, but if I am a contractor, whether it's, whether I'm an owner of a business or actually if I'm an implementer, if I'm someone trying to come in and help build a business, from your perspective, what would you say would be your, ultimate top of mind piece of advice for somebody who's trying to manage a roofing company?
I would say, and I feel like this is going to be a projection of my own experience, but I guess that's kind of what the question's about, right? I think that people don't pay enough attention to cash flow in roofing because it's so much money that runs in and out of your business. So I know that doesn't seem like a golden nugget necessarily, but I truly think it is, just because it's putting attention on something that we don't really focus that hard on, I believe, in roofing, because like I said, it is so much money in, that we don't always realize how much money out it is as well. But cash flow is so important, and as an insurance model, like all of that gets slowed down. So
Yeah, hey, that's for everybody in the business. We all need to understand how important that is. So that's a great golden nugget.
mhm.
But one thing I will say too is, we have to, as leaders, we also have to inspect what we expect. Okay. And it's easy for us to just say, hey, here's an idea, here's a concept, go get it done and then not follow up. Right. These are some, again, we're projecting our own experiences here, but I'm really trying to make sure that, if I have an initiative in a team, or one person doing something or implementing something, that I write it down and I'm following along, I'm supporting them, and I'm there along with the journey. We're having, meetings set up like, hey, if there's a new initiative, instead of, my habit in the past was like, hey, get this done, and I'd move on to something else. Now it's okay, get this done. Here's the timeline. Here's when we're going to circle back and talk about it again. And that way you're supporting. So you got to inspect what you expect. That's from a leadership perspective, and, and micromanage in a way that's not micromanagey, if you will. So I think those are a couple of things you can take away today, is to make sure you follow up on the task and the initiatives that you put in place as you grow your journey, and manage and pay attention to that cash flow, because that's vitally important into building wealth. That's what it was. I drew a blank a minute ago. So there it is. It's about wealth. Okay, if we're just in this business just to make a quick buck and get a job for ourselves, why be an entrepreneur? Why be an entrepreneur? Okay, we're all, whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, you're helping a business or you own the business, we want to surround ourselves with entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. But at the end of the day, we should all be thinking of, how are we building wealth? This isn't about getting rich quick and hitting that one lightning, catching that lightning in a bottle and catching that one big storm, and that's it. If you truly want to build wealth, you must run your business by the numbers. You must have systems and processes. You must understand the true value of cash and how it flows inside and out of your business. And you got to make sure to pull, chips off the table and put them in investments, and diversify yourself in order to build long-term wealth. Some of the most wealthiest people in the world did not get wealthy overnight. They got wealthy over time.
Mm-hmm.
Take that. It's been an awesome show, Brie. It's such a blessing to have you in my life, to have you working with me as my little kid. My baby sister gets to work with me every day. It's so much fun. For those of you listening, we appreciate you guys. Feel free to reach out to us. You can catch us on social media or at the Roofing Academy. And take care. God bless.
Yeah. Bye.